All right, in this video, I really want to talk about not necessarily a secret, but a way of finding bass that can really help you when you're out there on the water, especially if you're a tournament angler and you compete against a lot of the same guys who know a lot of the best areas out there on the body of water. There's a lot of guys who will tell you there are no secrets on the lakes that we fish, and to be honest, that's somewhat true. There's also something that I know that I have done over the years that has really helped me in tournaments, as well as just fishing in general, finding areas that aren't completely killed by all the pressure that we get. So before we get into that, this video is brought to you by Fin Fishing Apparel. I know that I always talk about my USA made sun shirts. Something I don't always talk about though is just my regular tri-blend t-shirts and long sleeve shirts. I know that I have had these for over a year now, and it seems like anyone who buys one of these ends up buying like 4 or 5 of them, because I'm telling you, this tri-blend material is one of the most soft that you will ever wear. So when it comes to hanging around in the fall, this is like my go-to. I literally wear one of these every single day, and I thought I would just mention them to you guys so that you know that they are in the website. So anyways, I will link down below. As you guys know, shopping at Fin Fishing is the best way to help support this channel, and I greatly appreciate it. All right, wanted to talk a little bit about something. Also, check this out. Got this sweet little trophy over the weekend. 3rd place, did not win the tournament that I was at, but what I'm going to talk about in this video really relates to how we got 3rd place, me and my partner in this tournament. I think there was 40-something boats in the tournament. I was fine with getting a 3rd place. I mean, I always obviously like to win. I was fine getting a 3rd place though, because I had not been on this body of water in over 3 weeks. And in the last 3 weeks, a lot has changed here where I live. The weather has really dipped. The fishing has changed. And so kind of had to figure things out throughout the day. Ended up catching 17.5 pounds of bass, both smallmouth and largemouth. And we lost by a couple of pounds on that in this particular tournament. But what I really wanted to talk about in this video and why it relates, also side note, I love hardware like this stuff. Like I have a bin full of plaques like this that someday I'm gonna put them all up, but I don't know when. But anyways, what I want to talk about today is really finding the sweet spot within the sweet spot. And like I said, this is just something that I don't think a lot of people are intentional about, or it's something that people are intentional about and they just don't really want to talk about. And that is that there's a lot of anglers out there who know about community holes, right? Like when you get to your bodies of water, there are community holes that they're community holes for a reason. 1, they call them community holes because that means that there's always a boat on them. But 2, that also usually means that they have produced well in the past. To be honest, bass use a lot of the exact same pieces of structure and cover every single year. You know, whether that's to spawn, whether that is to pre-spawn, whether that is to summer on, winter on, whatever it may be, they use a lot of the same areas. And when a lot of these areas get exposed, maybe that's because someone sees someone win on a particular area, and then all of a sudden there's 4 or 5 boats there. When these areas get exposed, I want to just clue you in on a little something that I have found to work really, really well. And I probably shouldn't talk about this, but what the hey, this video and this channel is all about becoming better at bass fishing. Sorry, I'm stumbling over my words a little bit because I didn't have a perfect structure for this video. But anyways, one thing that I have found over the years is finding what I'm going to be calling the pressure spot. Okay. And the reason that I call it a pressure spot is because when you have a lot of pressure on these community holes, this is an area where the fish go to that is relatively close to the community hole. And so what I mean by that is that if you go to a lot of lakes across the country, there will be a spot. A lot of times you can look at a map and you can be like, that is where it's probably going to go down. You know, it's like the perfect spot on a map. Maybe it's really tight contour lines that's associated with a main creek channel where you know the current hits. There's shell bed there. There's a brush pile there. Like there is a main spot on a lot of these community holes where it goes down. But when that gets exposed, it's not necessarily that the fish absolutely always leave. A lot of times though, that the fish that are left there are humongously pressured, and they are very tough to catch. And you can really spin your wheels out there on any given day trying to catch fish that are nearly impossible to catch, because the ones that were catchable that were in that school have been caught, and some of them have been released to go back into that school, so they don't obviously want to bite again. And then the ones that are a little bit more inactive bass by nature are the ones that are left. So then you get to these areas where there's fish, but they're so hard to catch, and you can literally like wreck your brains trying to catch them. And what I found is most of the time on these community holes, there is a pressure spot, meaning that there is a spot where these bass go to when they see a lot of pressure. And it is typically something that is very subtle. And it's not always something that you can look at a map and be like, that is where they're going to be. So a lot of times what I mean by that is that, like I said, that example that we talked about earlier, you might find a point that has a creek channel swing up next to it with a perfect little shell bed, brush pile, and that's where they are. But when everybody comes throughout the day and fishes that exact same lineup, those fish sometimes will just slide. And a lot of times they will slide, but they will stay within about 50 to 100 yards away from that spot. Because again, that spot is a community hole for a reason. It's probably is the perfect ambush point. It's probably the perfect place where the current hits and there's a hard bottom, and the whole ecosystem is perfect in that zone. But when you get all this pressure, those fish can sometimes just slide. So sometimes they will slide up on top of things. Sometimes they will slide down things. The biggest thing that I have found over the years is that when you find these areas that you know are community holes, or you find out that they're community holes by the number of boats that end up being on them, sometimes literally spending a little time graphing around and finding where these fish slide to can pay humongous dividends in the future. Because like I said, it may be within 50 yards. It may be a little flat spot. It may be a singular piece of isolated cover. Maybe it's a clump of grass, maybe a stump, maybe another little brush pile. It may be nothing. You know, that's something that I think that, you know, we have found about bass is that sometimes they are just not really relating to a whole lot. They're just kind of, they're around the primary like area where we've caught them, but they might be on just a flat bottom, like not a whole lot there. And so, you know, the best thing you can do, graph around and try to find that spot. Because this weekend, I will tell you that we went to an area. First of all, we couldn't get on like 5 areas that we wanted to this weekend. Like there's some spots that I feel like over the years we've had to ourselves. And look, everyone's getting better and better these days. Everyone kind of sees, especially on a small lake like the lake that I just fished, everyone sees where things happen. And so it just happens. Like I see it all the time. But we were fishing. There's a big kind of ridge on this lake where a lot of times it goes down. For a number of years, there was not a lot of guys that were fishing there. And I knew of one of these pressure spots on this place where I've seen a lot of pressure get there before and where the bass kind of push off to. I'm telling you what, we pulled up and there was probably 4 boats. We pulled up into a spot where we were within 100 yards. There was a guy 100 yards this way. There was a guy 100 yards this way, maybe even closer than that, maybe 75 yards. It was enough where I'm like, okay, I know that they're not fishing this pressure spot at all. And it's a flat. Like it's very, if you don't know, I honestly, I don't know why they get there. If I'm being 100% honest with you, I don't know why they get there. I just know that it is a spot that they will get to. And so we pulled up to this area, and I'm telling you, within 2 minutes, we caught our first fish, which it was 2 hours into the day, hadn't caught a fish, caught our first fish, and then I end up catching a 15-pound limit on this spot. And what's funny is that both of those boats that were either side of us ended up being about 20 yards away, which that's a different story for a different day. But they were not able to catch fish because they didn't understand what they were looking at. You know, like, and honestly, I don't blame them because, again, it's a very flat spot. And I know that the bottom is just a touch harder there, and that's why the fish were there. They weren't on the perfect rock piles that boat was sitting on and that boat was sitting on. They were on the flat spot. And so knowing that that was a pressure spot saved us in this deal. And then later in the day, once we kind of fished through that zone and I caught a lot of fish, we went to another area where, again, there was a good point that had a primary piece of cover on it. And that's where the fish normally are. And we had seen a boat or two there earlier in the day. And honestly, I wouldn't have caught a fish there if it wasn't for my partner, because my partner, I had to sit down, retie. So my partner jumped up on the front deck of my boat and he started, instead of fishing the main little zone where we were, he started working up the point, and same exact deal. He worked up the point about 50 yards and there was just a small isolated piece of cover and you could tell that there was some bass sitting on it. He fired a bait over there, caught a 360 smallmouth, which ended up being our big smallmouth of the day on that spot. And again, pressure spot. Those fish slid on to an area that was close to the good spot, but not a spot where a ton of people fish. So in this video, I just really wanted to talk to you about that, because if you are a tournament angler like myself, really thinking about those things can make you a lot better angler, because it's one thing to find a wad of fish. It's one thing to find fish that are all by yourself. And I competed in the Bassmaster Opens for a number of years where, man, when you're fishing a lake, no matter how big the lake is, and there's 225 boats fishing it, everybody finds everything. Not to mention, a lot of these guys are spending 5 days on the body of water. Like, everyone finds everything. And over the years, those tournaments where I really spent a lot of time trying to find more isolated stuff that was within the community area, but not necessarily the spot, those were the spots that always paid off. Always, always, always. And so what I just talked about, I would consider to be something very juicy. Not all of you are going to apply it, because maybe not all of you are tournament anglers, but regardless, you all see a lot of pressure out there. And it is something that can really help you to get around some fish when everything is covered up. So anyways, guys, hope you enjoyed this video. Hope that you, I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Pew, pew.